Hi everyone, it's Debbie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. If you're new here, I'm a reseller. I've been reselling for 20 years, and today I have a what sold video for you. I'm going to share 15 items that sold on eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari in the month of January 2025. I sold a total of 64 items for a gross amount of $2,374.34. We will start on eBay because I sold the most on eBay. I sold 39 items for a gross amount of $1,162.08. In my last what sold video, I talked about how I was really trying to go through items that have been sitting in my inventory closet unlisted. And I wanted to get those things listed because it's basically just money wasted sitting there that I spent on inventory. So this is one of the items that I had in a haul a long time ago, and then I just never listed it. And I'm so glad that I finally did. It was the Hunter Cool Humidifier Plus Carefree Cool Mist. Then I put the model number, and then I put that it works. I put a video clip of it so that I could demonstrate it actually working, and I put a little piece of paper above the fan part so you could see that it would blow, because I wanted the buyer to have confidence that it actually worked. If ever it's something electronic, I try to add a video clip to show them that it does work, and if they later say it doesn't work, I can show that it was working before I sent it to them. I had someone send a message to me and asked if I accept returns. I replied back right away, yes, absolutely, I do. And she purchased it almost immediately after I said that I did accept returns. She then sent a couple more messages. I can't remember exactly what she said. I'll pop it up. But she had said that this was a humidifier that she had used and she really liked it, but hers was starting to make some kind of noise. And so she was happy to find another one. And I let her know that this one was not making that sound, shipped it off to her. It's been a little bit now since she's received it, so I'm sure it's working great. So once again, answer questions quickly because they often turn into sales. It sold for $53.67. My earnings after the postage and all the fees were taken out was $27.05. I paid just $6.29 at my local Goodwill. It took just 22 days to sell after I listed it, and my profit was $20.76. So that had just been sitting there taking up space, and now I have $27.05 that I didn't have before. So I'm really glad that I took that time to not go source and list that old inventory. I did source several times in January, so it was really fun to get to go out and source again, knowing that I had taken care of listing some of those items that had been just sitting there. Let's take a minute to research pre-owned humidifiers and see what brands have sold for the highest in the past 90 days. That way, if we are out thrifting or at garage sales, we'll be more familiar with these brand names and what they look like, and more likely to pick them up if we see them. Some of the brands that sold for the highest were April Air, Dyson, Ideal Air, Honeywell, and Venta. The next item was my mom's, and she wore it back in like the 90s or early 2000s. And I know that items from that time period are selling really well right now, so it's a good time to get those things listed. This one was titled All That Jazz Maxi Dress, size medium, slinky 90s Y2K black red. It sold for $52.74. My earnings were $33.51. It was my mom's, so the cost of goods was $0. It took just 28 days to sell, and my profit was $33.51. Let's look at sold comps for Y2K dresses that sold the very best in the last 90 days and see what styles are selling well, and pay attention to the keywords that are being used to help attract buyers. What I did was I went through over 100 of these dresses that sold the highest, and I wanted to pick out the keywords that were used the most frequently. So I made a list, then I went through and made tally marks to see which ones were used most frequently. And here is my list going from highest to lowest. Whimsy Goth, Fairy, Silk, Fairy Core, Grunge, Goth, Glam, Beaded, and Romantic. So you might think about using some of these keywords that are trending if they apply to help the right buyer find your item and hopefully sell for more money. Next item was another item that was just sitting there and I had not gotten to it. And I'm glad that I did because it was a great profit. I titled this listing Wrangler Retro Slim Bootcut Jeans, tag 3634. Then I always put what the jeans actually measure. That way, if someone is searching for a size, they will be able to find my listing with the actual size, not just the tag size. It sold for $43.69. My earnings were $24.18. I paid just $1.68 at the Oklahoma City Goodwill bins. It took just 9 days to sell and my profit was $22.50. So again, now I have back $24.18 in the bank that was just sitting there unlisted. I live in Oklahoma, so every time I go into a Goodwill, there are so many Wranglers. Most of them sell around $20, so I often just skip right past them. There are also a lot of them listed on eBay. I noticed currently there are 69,000 pre-owned Wranglers on eBay. So I thought what I would do was look and see what has sold in the last 90 days for the highest amount. Go through, show some pictures of them, what the tags look like, so that we can be familiar with the Wranglers that sell for a lot of money. One thing that I noticed that was common in the ones that sold the highest was they said Bluebell. So if you see Bluebell on a Wrangler tag, I would be sure and look at it closer. The ones that sold for hundreds of dollars weren't in perfect condition. A lot of them had multiple holes, rips, and stains, so I would not let that keep you from picking up a pair of these Wranglers. So all of the pictures that I'm showing here are for Wranglers that sold for $199 or higher. So next time you find a pair of Wranglers, you might stop and take another look at them and see if any of them have tags that look like these. The next dress I picked up because I have a shirt that's Karen Kane. I bought it at Dillard's probably like 20 years ago, and I love this shirt. It's one of my favorite shirts. I just wore it to dinner a couple nights ago, and the quality has stayed so nice over all of these years. So I saw the tag Karen Kane, and I was hoping that it would work and I could keep it for myself, but it didn't quite fit me right. So I decided to sell it. I titled the listing Karen Kane Dress, women's size small, black, long sleeve, soft stretch, rayon spandex, and then I put LBD for little black dress. It sold for $34.82. My earnings were $21.36. I paid just $1.29 at my local Goodwill. It was on a $1.29 day, so that was a great deal. It took just 1 month and 7 days to sell, and my profit was $20.07. Let's look at sold comps for Karen Kane pre-owned items that sold the highest in the last 90 days. When I looked through them, the first thing I noticed that it was a lot of substantial pieces, a lot of jackets, a couple skirts, and a dress. So I would definitely look in jackets for this brand. I also noticed a lot of very trending styles and keywords. So it might have been the keywords that sold the items rather than the brand name. I noticed faux fur, velvet, mob wife on one of them. I've been noticing mob wife more and more. Leather, western, southwestern, cowgirl. I saw art to wear, embroidered, and there were, I think, 3 military jackets. So I would be sure and look out for not just this brand, but specifically those styles, because I think they will sell well in any brand, and especially if it's also combined with vintage or Y2K. The next one was another item that I picked up on a $1.29 day. This one I titled J. Crew Cameron Slim Crop Pant size 14T, and then I wrote out 14 tall in 4-season stretch black. I looked up information on the tag and I found out that it had this fabric called 4-season stretch, and it was this special fabric, and it said it holds you in, lifts you up, and makes you look perfect. So anytime you can market something as slimming or lifting or anything that makes someone look better, usually can help the item sell. It sold for $46.98. My earnings were $30.53. I paid just $1.29 at my local Goodwill. It took 4 months and 20 days to sell, and my profit was $29.24. I was so excited that I found that on $1.29 day. There are a lot of J. Crew items out there. Some would say never pick up J. Crew. It is just too oversaturated. If you look at the sold comps, there are currently 440,000 listings for J. Crew items. If you go to sold and completed, only 60,000 have sold in the last 90 days. So if you calculate that, that means that the sell-through rate is only 13.6%, which is really low. So what I do is I find the tag inside the item and I look up the style number. You just Google that style number with J. Crew and it'll pull up the exact item that you have. Then I look up sold comps based upon that specific style. Now let's take a moment to look at the highest selling J. Crew items in the pre-owned category in the past 90 days. The first item that sold the highest was this Holy Grail skirt. It sold for $675 pre-owned and in a size 0. So I had to click into that one because I wanted to see not just the stock photos, but the actual photos so that I could be a little bit more familiar in case I come across this skirt while thrifting. This J. Crew vintage leather messenger bag also sold very high. Be sure that you look at bags and shoes also because they can have a high value. I saw a pair of boots occur several times in these highest selling J. Crew items. There was the cutest J. Crew library themed skirt and sweater set. So if you see something that looks just special and unique like that, I would definitely look that up. Of course, lots of coats and jackets. I find that when I'm looking up in any brand and sorting highest to lowest, a lot of times the jackets and coats are what sell very high. Just a quick reminder, if you're new and not subscribed, I'd love to have you back. Just hit the subscribe button down below, and if you hit the notification bell, it will let you know when I release new videos. The next one was something that I parted out. If you saw last month's What Sold video, I had a food processor that I parted out and sold the different pieces, and it did great. In January, I sold parts from our old Nespresso machine. Our machine broke and we had to purchase a new one. So I started out and I was a little lazy and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna list the whole thing and put it as not working for parts and surely someone will buy it. But I think when you do that, it really adds to the shipping cost because it's so heavy. Maybe people aren't looking as much for a broken Nespresso machine for the parts, but they are looking for individual parts. So when I was getting very little activity on the broken machine, I took that listing down and just listed the parts, and they sold so fast. The first one, I put Nespresso, and I think it's Virtuo. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Next, Pod Capsule Bin Collector 2-piece. It sold for $24.24. My earnings were $11.90. It took just 2 days to sell, and my profit was $11.90 because it was just something that we owned and had broken. It's so great to be able to do that rather than just throw it away. Then I also sold the drip tray in just 3 days. It sold for $17.55. My earnings and profit were $9.88. I sold the water container. It sold one day and then the person canceled it. I was like, oh, darn. And then it sold again the very next day. So the water container took just 4 days to sell. It sold for $29.03. My earnings and my profit was $15.48. So I got back on those pieces $37.26. So I think that's great. The next two items came from a haul that I had where I was saying it was just an ordinary haul, just not anything like super great. And I did an update video where I showed where I was at and how many things I had left to sell. I sold a couple more things from that haul, so almost everything is sold now. This was the Banana Republic maxi dress, women's medium, striped navy, white, strapless. And I also wore this in a video, but it was a little bit too big for me. So I went ahead and listed it, but I liked it so much. Ended up going to someone in Hawaii. So I thought this is a perfect dress for Hawaii. It sold for $27.39. My earnings were $11.75, which is pretty low. The shipping to Hawaii was high. I think it was like $9. So after fees and shipping, that reduced it quite a bit. So my earnings were $11.75. I paid $1.48 at the Goodwill bins in Oklahoma City. It took 4 months and 22 days to sell, and my profit was $10.27. Then I also sold the Motherhood maternity denim shirt. I put medium, pearl snap, western stretch, blue, and jean. It sold for $16.31. My earnings were $7.11. I paid 85 cents at the Goodwill bins. It took 5 months and 29 days to sell, and my profit was $6.26. So I have now gone a little bit past what I predicted that I would make on that haul, and everything is almost sold. So it came really close to what I had predicted that I would make. My earnings now are $439.07. My cost of goods for that haul was $43. So my profit is now $396.07. So my intent when I have the hauls is I try to predict as close as I can, but I never want to over-predict or oversell the items. If anything, I want to estimate a little bit low so I don't give false expectations. So that one is coming out pretty close, but just a little bit higher than what I had predicted. Okay, this bucket is getting very empty. All I have left is a bra, a vintage nightgown, 2 bicycle jerseys, and this shawl sweater. Then on Poshmark, I sold 24 items for a gross amount of $1,103. The first one was this dress that I thought was so pretty. It was just a little bit stretchy, and then it had all this fringe, and it looked like a 1920s flapper dress. I thought it was great. I purchased it a long time ago, before I got married and moved here when I lived in Oklahoma City. And I've talked about the store that I went to in Midwest City, where on Sundays they had a fill a bag sale. And on those, I did an average cost of goods, and it was just a quarter. Well, I had this dress and I had listed it on eBay a long time ago, and it never ever sold. So I ended up ending a lot of things, and just because I thought they were like holding my store down, but I thought I'm going to store these in plastic containers and maybe at some point they will be worth some money. So every once in a while I pull out some of those items that I haven't seen for a long time. And this was one of them. I'm glad that I saved it because it sold really well. And some of the other items that are like Y2K items now are doing really well, where 7-8 years ago they weren't. This one I might have a little problem with the pronunciation, but I'll pop the tag up. It was vintage and it looked like Enrico Cerati. Fringe dress, women's size 10. Then I put flapper, cocktail, Great Gatsby. It sold for $39. My earnings were $28.22. I paid just 25 cents for it a long time ago. And you know, of course you can't store everything, but I just selected certain items that I thought were really neat items that I thought I'm gonna put these away like a time capsule, and maybe someday they will be worth something. So I'm glad I did, because the profit ended up being $27.97. And the tags that I put on that were flapper, 1920s, and Great Gatsby. I asked Google if Great Gatsby themed parties are still popular, and the answer was yes. So I thought I would look at Poshmark and put in Great Gatsby, then change my filters to all sizes, sold between $100 to $500. I wanted to take a look at what sold for a really high amount in this style, because the more familiar you are, the more you expose yourself to these higher selling items, the more you will recognize them when you're out thrifting. And while I was looking at these dresses, I learned a great bolo. I kept seeing something that looked like a book. It said Great Gatsby, but I noticed it said Kate Spade. And I kept seeing it over and over again. So I thought I need to look at this a little closer, because if I saw that out thrifting, I probably would have just passed right by it. But when I looked at a listing, it's actually a little Kate Spade clutch. It's so cute. So now I am aware if I see something that looks like that, I will definitely pick it up. Or maybe someone watching this will come across it when outsourcing, because these sell for a really high amount. The next one came from another Goodwill haul, and this one was also in my Clean With Me video. I titled this listing Vintage Donna Rico Black Sleeveless Dress, Midi Length, Scoop Draped Back, Cocktail. It sold for $15. My earnings were $12. My cost of goods was just 40 cents. I purchased it at the Goodwill bins in Oklahoma City. It took 4 months and 6 days to sell, and my profit was $11.60. The next one skewed my earnings a little bit, so I'm going to have to pull this out. My son had a gold chain, and he asked me to sell it for him a few years ago because he wanted to put it towards saving up for a car. So I listed it. I didn't get a lot of activity. And so finally I took it to a jeweler and asked them how much it would cost to appraise it. They said $80, but they gave me all of the information. They said, okay, we'll give you this information, but if you want like an official appraisal, it'll be $80. So I thought, well, instead what I'll do, I will list it for $500 and put in the listing what the jeweler said. But if they want to authenticate it, if they purchase it outright for $500, it will go to Poshmark, where they will authenticate it and then send it to them. But if they offer a lower amount, then, they're just going to have to take my word for it and hopefully trust that I'm being honest. Buyer was so nice. We had great communication back and forth. He offered $360. I accepted. My earnings were $288. What I decided to do was also put that $288 as my cost of goods, since I paid it out to Jason, making my profit $0, but putting a little bit more in Jason's bank account towards a new vehicle. I listed this when Jason was just 17 years old. He is now 19 years old. He'll be 20 in just a few months. So it did take a little while to sell, but that's okay. He said he was not in a rush. Then on Mercari, I sold just one item, but it was a great item. I've really reduced how many items I'm selling on Mercari, because I do not seem to sell very many on Mercari. So I feel like it's kind of getting to be a waste of time to list on there. So I'm being selective what I put on there, and maybe things that are higher prices or things that I think will sell on there. This was one of the Free People Movement hatch jackets that I talked about last month. It was the new with tags, Free People Movement hatch Pippa packable jacket, extra large, and then I wrote out extra large, pink puffer maternity. It shows that it sold for like 90 something dollars, but the buyer paid $18.59 in shipping and fees. So the buyer actually paid $109.29. My earnings were $80.79. I paid $39.24. I purchased it from Fox Liquidation. It took 19 days to sell, and my profit was $41.55. So these jackets are selling great. Now, before I go over my numbers, I wanted to show you my little notebook. I have people ask me all the time, do you keep spreadsheets? How do you keep track of everything? So I thought I would show you, since January just ended. I just went to Dollar General and I picked up one of these little bill organizers for this year that have the months, and they have pockets. And anytime I go pick up inventory, I write it down. On January 9th, I did online sourcing on Poshmark and spent $27.91. Then I had a Fox liquidation purchase, 2 Goodwill purchases, a bins purchase, and my daughter Sydney went to a sale and found Nike shorts on sale, brand new with tags, retail arbitrage. So I bought those from her for $35. So since I hadn't sourced since October, I sourced a little extra in January. So then I just total it $503.63. Then any expenses that I have, I write down also. And so I bought poly bags and stickers. And I talked about in my last video, the long plastic bags to put like formals in. And I purchased Post-it notes. So my expenses for those type of things were really high. I'll go months and months without buying anything. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'll be out of everything. That was $81.56. So I'll try to remember to show you every month. I probably won't have any expenses like that for a few more months. Then I also keep track of miles because that is a great tax deduction. I went to the post office 6 times. Usually I do the package pickup, but I have gone to the post office to drop off things sometimes. And I went 6 times. It was 11 miles each time, so 66 miles. My local Goodwill, I went twice, so that's 26 miles. The bins is 100 miles away, so that's 200 miles. And then I have a project, I'll probably tell you about it in a little bit, but it's working on someone's estate, and that was 254 miles. So I total 546 miles. Then I went to irs.gov since we are in 2025 now to see what the mileage rates are for self-employed in business, and it's 70 cents a mile for the current year. So that means in January, my tax deduction for mileage was $382.20. Now it's not always that high. I had a lot of driving in this month, but the miles really add up, so be sure you're keeping track of them. I'll put my total, and then month to month, I'll do a running total. Now next month, I will take January's and I'll add it to February. So I'll have a running total all through the year so that when I get to the end of the year, it's super easy and it only takes me a few minutes. Then any receipts I have, I just stick in this pocket. That way I have them for my records if ever I get audited. On eBay, I go to my seller hub. I click on performance, then on sales. Then I change it from the last 31 days to last month, click generate report, and that gives me all of the numbers that I need. I print that out and put it in the pocket for January. So I went into January and I just printed off my January numbers. And then on Poshmark, I had a little trouble with the sales report. So sometimes what I do is I just go to Closet Insights and I just print out this part where it shows my gross was $1,103 and my earnings $851. And then at the end of the year, I'll print out the entire year. I just tuck this in the pocket and it takes so little time. And it works really well. I was worried when I just switched to this that my accountant would be like, oh, that's not good enough. But the first time she did my taxes about 6 years ago, she was like, that was so organized. You did such a great job. And I was like, oh, yay. And so I've been doing this for several years and having a CPA do my taxes. And it's just really simple, easy for me. And then I just save my notebook each year and it doesn't take up a lot of space and it ends up being everything that I need. So this is what works for me. If you are a spreadsheet person, that's amazing. I'm sure you can get lots of great information. Just for me, it took me way too much time, and this is just what has ended up working out for me, and it's really simple. So people ask me all the time, so I thought I would just show you. Since it's January at the very beginning, I can continue to show you throughout the year. Okay, let's take a look at my numbers for January 2025. And remember, these are very part-time numbers. I sold a total of 64 items for a gross amount of $2,374.37. The amount that I received back in my bank after any fees and postage were taken out was $1,511.55. My cost of goods was $679.64. And in that cost of goods, I put the amount that I paid out to my son for his gold chain. And my profit was $831.91. If we look at it by platform on eBay, I sold 39 of the items for $1,162.08. My earnings on eBay, the amount that was deposited back in my bank, was $579.13. My cost of goods on eBay was $167.15, and my profit was $411.98. On Poshmark, I sold 24 items for a gross amount of $1,103. My earnings were $851.63. My cost of goods was $473.25, and that was so high because I included what I paid my son Jason out for his gold chain. So my profit ended up being just $378.38. And I think that is the number that is the most important to me, because the gross sales can be inflated very high if you have a high cost of goods for items. So what you really want to look at is how much you're actually making in profit. Then on Mercari, I just had the one item, the jacket that I just went over. So if we look at where my items came from, out of the 64 items that I sold, 43 were thrifted, 16 came from liquidation, and 5 were retail arbitrage. That is everything that I have for you today. If you enjoy these types of videos and wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would appreciate it so much. And if you're new and not subscribed, I would love to have you back. Just hit the subscribe button down below. And if you hit the notification bell, it will let you know when I release new videos. Thank you so much for watching, and everybody have a great day. Bye.